Hello, this is What's Under the Bed. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you have any suggestions of who I can interview or just want to say hello, please leave a comment. Now, enjoy this week's interview. I'm here with Rich Ragsdale. There are so few of my guests who wear so many hats. Rich is a director, composer, animator, illustrator, writer, and producer. His creativity and experimentation with the camera has made him a master of stunning visual style that has become a signature for his movies and music videos he directs. He is the director of 3 great genre films. He debuted The Curse of El Charo. Then he followed with Ghost House, which starred Scout Taylor-Compton and shot in Thailand. He just released The Long Night, his second collaboration with Scout. It's about a couple's quiet weekend interrupted when a nightmarish cult and their maniacal leader come to fulfill an apocalyptic prophecy. These movies are beautifully shot. What was achieved on the budgets he had to work with is remarkable. He's given many great interviews about these movies, and we will touch on them briefly, but I am fascinated by the journey that got him there. It's a thrill to have him on the show. Rich, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to meet you, too. Thank you for having me on.
So your younger brother is Kevin. You were born in Queens, New York, and both raised in Nashville, Tennessee. What was your childhood like growing up in Nashville?
Well, I think it was relatively normal. I mean, we were weird kids, so, but, Tennessee, especially in Nashville at that time was, Nashville's now a pretty big city, but when we were kids, Nashville felt much more like a kind of a small town that wanted to be a big town. So it was much more rural. And, I didn't have a lot of exposure to like art films and things like that. So we grew up just watching whatever like horror movies came on TV. So.
Before the influence of movies, what was the thing that scared you most? Was there a fear of the dark or a monster under the bed?
Well, what scared me the most? I don't know. I think I've always just, as far back as I remember, I'm just afraid of dying. So I just don't want to die. And I know I will, but I'm doing my best to stave it off.
Many kids are first introduced to horror through fairy tales like Billy Goat's Gruff or Hansel and Gretel. Was there any story that scared you as a child?
Well, I remember when I was a little kid, my dad gave me a book of short stories that were, it was a collection of short, scary stories that were in this volume. It was like Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And I thought they were pretty creepy. I would try to get one of my parents to read them to me before I went to bed, just to give me a good scare, I guess. I don't know. I've always liked monsters, though, and scary things. I ever since I can remember, I loved, darker kind of scary things. It's a weird proclivity, but
So, who are these guys?
That's me and my brother. Yeah, we were cool like that. See. I think that was actually like for Halloween or something. We were both going as like rockers.
I heard you and your brother got into horror movies at an early age, watching Amicus and Hammer films on a show called Friday Night Frights.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to like set the VCR up to record the horror movies they would show late at night, and then watch them over and over again, really.
Did your parents have any restrictions on what you were allowed to watch?
Yeah, I would say that they did. We grew up in a relatively religious kind of house, and yes, when we were young, they definitely were monitoring some of the things that we were allowed to see, and so as a kid, your job is to figure out how to get around that.
Good job. What theater would you go to, and what was your go-to choice at the snack bar?
Well, there were there were a couple of different movie theaters in Nashville as we would go to as kids. and we saw a lot of great movies at these places, but I'd be hard pressed to remember the names of the theaters at this point, but they were mostly, just traditional movie theaters. But my go-to snack has always been and will always be popcorn. So,
did you have a video store before Blockbuster?
We did. And actually, even when I first got out of high school, I worked at a video store for a while in Nashville called Groovy Movies. That was, there were like lots of little mom and pop places, and then Blockbuster kind of came along and crushed most of them. But, before that, we would go to these places, and my brother and I would just kind of go through, especially like mostly the horror films and the science fiction films and stuff, and just rent whatever had the coolest cover, We were not discerning beyond that.
Photography was a hobby of your father's, and he bought a home video camera when they first became available. What is the Senseless Violence series?
Oh, yes. Like when we were kids, our dad, he was a sort of a hobbyist photographer, and he bought a video camera that actually you couldn't take it away from the VCR. It had to be connected to the VCR. It was pretty crude, but we would make these shorts with our friends. We'd have them come over, and we would just shoot different short films of us and our friends like killing each other. We would just make up these little scenarios there would really be almost no story, and it would just be senseless murder, and just like we would, like if you could point the camera out into the backyard, we would like sneak up behind one of the other guys and like bash him in the head and then drag him off and throw him in the garbage or something, and that would be the whole story, and we would just do as many variations on friend murder as we could, and they would murder us too. I mean, it was an equal opportunity murders. Yeah.
Do any of those movies still exist?
Oh man, I would pay someone $1 million if they had those somewhere. I mean, it's just, I would love to see those more than anything else I've ever made. I doubt if any of them still exist, because we were just dumb. So it's like we would make all these little dumb shorts, and then we would probably just record over it, like record a Chucky movie or something off a cable, over top of it,
What were you like as a teenager?
I don't know. I was, I started getting into music, so I was really into like music, and I loved movies. I was definitely kind of a weird kid. I was definitely, I was not a jock, and I was not like the super popular guy, but I was, I played in bands, and I drew a lot. I was always trying to be creative, and I think I was kind of a little, from the outside, I might have seemed a little weird, but I didn't really realize it at the time. I just, I was kind of oblivious to what was cool and not cool.
What was the name of your band in high school?
We had a bunch of different bands. One band I was in was called Soft Skull Sam, and that was the first band I was ever in. There was another band called Bombshell. It was more of like a heavy metal kind of band. So, they were all, it was just like a long list of really dumb names.
Do you believe more songs have been written about love, lust, or heartbreak?
Well, there's a lot of love songs, and I think a lot of songs you could sort of look at them as lust songs or love songs. I think especially with rock and roll and stuff, there's a lot of gray area in there. There's also a lot of heartbreak songs, but I think there's more songs about love because it's aspirational.
David Lynch's film Eraserhead is a very influential movie for you. What do I need to know before I watch Eraserhead?
Well, I mean, the one thing I would say about Eraserhead for me is that it's the single greatest English language film of the latter half of the 20th century. I mean, it's just like, it's a perfect movie for me. But now a lot of people don't like it. It's a very weird movie. And, the funny thing is, like when I was a kid, I didn't have access to art films or anything in Tennessee as a kid. it was very hard to find that stuff. And I had read about Eraserhead in a book, and it was kind of it was this book on horror movies, but they had this like big 2-page spread on this movie called Eraserhead. And they talked about how, oh, this guy, David Lynch, is the future of horror. And it had a very sort of cogent sort of analysis of what the film was really about. And it had the text was over this picture that went across 2 pages of Jack Nance with all the eraser shavings blowing behind his head. And I just remember thinking, this movie sounds amazing. Now, I don't know about you, but my experience has been like, if there's a movie like that I'm really looking forward to and I read a lot about and I get real excited about, it almost never lives up to your expectations. And this was one of those where I saw this movie and it was not only as good as I thought it would be, it was so much better. And it also, I've seen a lot of art films or, kind of surrealist films since then, but it was really the first one I saw like that. And I just, as a kid, I didn't know that you could make movies like that. And so it really impressed me and changed my life, really,
You graduated from Berkeley College of Music in Boston with degrees in both composition and film scoring. Before completing your graduate studies at USC, Berkeley ranks closely with Juilliard for prestige. I'm curious what kind of student you were. Would you be out sunning or playing frisbee at the Fens? Would you take the T downtown to hang at the Common, Quincy Market, or the waterfront? Or would you chill out at a kickback on a Saturday night?
I would say that I was like, when I was in high school, I was a terrible student. I hated school. I barely made it out of high school. I was a terrible student. I just didn't, and it was because I didn't want to be there. But by the time I got to Berkeley, I was in school to do something I wanted to do, and I became a very good student. I actually, I had a sort of a social life, but not a lot. I worked really hard, and so I was a pretty boring guy, I guess. I just practiced and wrote music, and on occasion I would hang out with my friends or something, but I was very serious in college.
Jonathan Wolfe is a television composing legend whose credits include Married with Children, Will and Grace, and King of Queens. He is the man who wrote the ever-changing slap-bass theme to Seinfeld. How did Jonathan Wolfe influence what came next for you after college?
Well, like a lot of people, I got out of college and I was unemployed for quite a while, just doing kind of odd music jobs, trying to get a footing. And a friend of mine had gotten a job with Jonathan Wolfe as a music editor, and John needed a guitar player, so my friend recommended me, and I got the job working for John. And about a year into working for him, I started getting to write music. And at first it would just be like a cue for Married with Children or something like that. It would just be like 1 or 2 pieces here or there. And then eventually he gave me a show, my own show, which was, my first show was called Reunited. It was a mid-season replacement back in the old, that's what they used to call them back in the old days. And it was of the, I think, 200 shows that were in prime time that year on network television. This one came in, I think, number 200 in the ratings. It was not a popular show, but it was fun, and that got me started. And then I started getting more better gigs. I did King of Queens and some other shows that are fairly well known. And then outside of that, I started getting, it afforded me the ability to get work outside of working for John. So I did a lot of video games and stuff too.
Well, you just mentioned providing scores for video games like Alien vs. Predator, No Lives Forever, and Fight Club. During your downtime when your television shows were on hiatus, you began making experimental films. Where did the idea to process 8mm film using coffee and orange juice come from?
I had read about it on the internet, actually, and that some people had done it with still film. And I was talking to a friend and I was like, I wonder if you could use it on motion picture film, like process it by hand instead of using the traditional chemicals. And so, I kind of modified the recipe that people use for still film to work with Super 8mm. And so I started, it's an experimental technique, and I've used it on a couple of things, but you go out and you shoot Super 8 and then you bring the cartridge back. I would actually go in a dark closet and just, I would smash them open with a hammer and just dump it into, I would just treat it really badly, treat the film as badly as I could, dump it into the canister and like let it just dry hanging off a banister. If it fell off, I didn't care. I just pick it back up. And it was, because I was trying to sort of emulate the look of like silent films when they've gone really bad, if that makes any sense.
What is Dirty Bros Productions, and how did your short Into Something Rich and Strange come about?
So when I was working on the television shows, I had started making short films kind of in my spare time as a composer. And a composer that I worked with, a good friend of mine, a guy named Paul Buckley, he was trying to get the gig scoring that TV show. I think it was Carnival, the HBO show. And he was like, it's about a haunted kind of carnival. It'll be really cool. I've got an inn over there, but I want to do a cool presentation. So he actually wrote a piece of music and then asked me to make a little film to go with it. So I did, and it was this very experimental animation that's all sort of sideshow related. And I used a bunch of different techniques. I didn't know what I was doing, really. I was just kind of just trying to make something cool. And it was a very strange little movie. And I gave it to him and he didn't get the show. And so we had this little short film that I had made. I didn't know what to do with it. So I started sending it to film festivals. And I was the first one I sent it to was the Coney Island Film Festival, where they have the they have the festival in the sideshow, or the freak show, where all the freaks perform and swallow swords and all that. And it got in, and then it won the festival for best experimental film. And then the short went on to play with like a bunch of other festivals, and it actually one time it opened for, I don't know if these guys mean anything to you, but it opened in front of a Guy Madden movie feature, and it was my short and then a short by the brothers SKYE, who are these animators I'm a big fan of, and then Guy Madden, who at the time in particular I was a huge fan of his movies. And so it was this kind of like, wow, this is really cool. It's like I make this one short film and I'm showing with my heroes, so that's kind of what got me wanting to make films, got kind of the spark that started it all.
You've just said that your very first short film at the Coney Island Film was at the screened at the Coney Island Film Festival, but more recently your short film The Loop screened in front of of Evil Dead at the Knoxville Film Festival. Was your favorite moment on the festival circuit with any of your films?
Well, I mean, screening with Guy Madden and the brothers SKYE was kind of a high watermark, which is kind of at the beginning of my career. But we've been to a lot of different festivals, and yes, The Loop playing before the Evil Dead, that's kind of a high watermark too. I mean, I'm a big fan of that film, and that was really cool. And The Loop was just a short we shot in our downtime between features, and it actually went on it screened in a lot of really cool festivals. So
around 2005, you took a break from music to direct the horror feature The Curse of El Charo, which was produced by your brother's company, Pretty Dangerous Films. You chose to score the movie as well. You've said this was your film school. I heard you say in an interview, working with larger musical forms helps understand larger narrative forms. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like when I first began writing music, I was, in bands, and I was writing songs, and songs are generally very small form, and it's a lot like maybe making a short film where the narrative is maybe not that complex, and it's very short, it's very manageable. And then you go to music school and you start studying larger forms, and there's I think a kind of, it's maybe not one-to-one comparison with like telling stories and writing for like orchestra and sort of longer, more involved pieces, but it definitely kind of one definitely informs the other for me. At least that's been my experience.
You've directed a slew of amazing music videos for artists like Lenny Kravitz, Blues Traveler, 311, POD, and more. Watching them, one can see the evolution of your style from experimental photography to its use and techniques in making stunning visuals combined with brilliant animation, dark themes, and social satire. It's a unique stamp that is carried over to your films Ghost House and The Long Night. You also directed the video for the band Super Black Market and their song I Won't Forget You, which could be described as a zombie love story. Do you prefer fast zombies or slow zombies?
You know what? I'm gonna tell you now, I'm a slow zombie guy. I'm like, you have the Night of the Living Dead poster there, and that movie also, that was another movie that had a big, profound effect on me as a young person. And so I'm Team Romero, Uni
and the Urchins have a song called Mushroom Cloud. You directed and animated this incredible video, which is filled with dark political satire, phallic bombs, and a nod to Stanley Kubrick's ultimate anti-war film, Dr. Strangelove. With everything going on in the world right now, why do you think there aren't more protest songs?
It beats me. I thought that, I'll try not to be too political, but I thought when Trump came into office, we were going to have a whole new wave of like punk rock music like we had in the 70s, or protest music like we had in the 60s. And we just, maybe it's there, but it's definitely not making it to the mainstream. I do think that and you see it a lot with, I think a lot of Hollywood films a lot of these films are, there's so much money involved in the big tentpole films that it's like nobody wants to upset anybody. It's like even Marvel will adapt their movies to show them in China. They'll take things out that will offend people over there, and so or it not maybe offend people but offend their government, and so it's like, I don't know. I would think that there would be more of that stuff.
Your video for Echo Park Social Club and their song A Girl Like That depicts a beautiful and very bloody woman walking into a laundromat to the horror and delight of the patrons. She strips naked to wash her clothes and herself while a black and white television shows scenes from a movie interspersed with breaking news about the band's murder in another part of town. In one of the scenes, a question appears in French across the bottom of the screen, and I'd like to ask you that question. Do you believe the world is a dream or a nightmare?
I believe the world is a dream that occasionally veers into a nightmare. But that's a reference. That was a reference to like a French New Wave kind of thing. I was trying to, kind of do like a little homage to like Godard.
You also directed a video for Macy Kay for her song Karma is a Bitch Like You, which includes kick butt vampires. How do you prefer your vampires? Monstrous nightmares like Nosferatu and Salem's Lot, flamboyant, aristocratic, and romantic like Interview with a Vampire, nocturnal party animals like The Hunger or Lost Boys, or do you like high school heartthrobs who sparkle like Twilight?
I would list them in the reverse order that you just, so it's like, or maybe in the order that I love Nosferatu. I love Bela Lugosi. I'm a classic vampire guy, but some of those other movies, I love The Lost Boys and, or like Fright Night. Those are great films too. One of my favorite vampire films of recent times was Let the Right One In. I don't know if you saw that, but that is
so good.
Amazing,
so good.
Amazing movie. It's probably honestly my single favorite vampire movie. So I don't know where that fits in that list. It's definitely it's a very dark, very serious movie.
Yeah, I don't know where it would go, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I like
Might
my
have to
vampire movies sort of like Scandinavian and arty. I don't know.
We might have to change our list. Angela Marclou, who is also your name apparently, is a successful. It's the
She's
name
my
on
girlfriend,
Zoom.
and I'm using her computer actually.
She's a successful and talented photographer. She's worked with you as far back as 2012. Did the both of you meet through work?
No, she was living here in Venice, just down the street from me, and we met at a coffee shop. Actually, just kind of randomly started bumping into each other, and we got along pretty good. She's all right. We're a couple now. We live together, and that's why I'm using her computer as opposed to my own, because it's messy in my studio and nice in hers.
I don't like to discuss other people in an interview normally, but I am very curious. What did Angela do that had her working with explosives for the Canadian government?
Well, she went to college to study chemistry, and she got a job. She was a scientist, and she got a job working for what they call Environment Canada. And, they would test explosives and, for, I guess their chemical properties or something. I'm not 100% sure what it was, but, it makes for a good story, So she makes it sound like maybe it wasn't as exciting as it sounds, like I don't think they got to like go out and blow up tanks or anything. But it's like.
Is it true Angela has one of your drawings tattooed on her leg?
She does. A drawing I did for her for Valentine's Day many years ago, and she decided to get it tattooed on her leg. And she's the only person to ever get one of my drawings tattooed on them that I know of. So
I want to touch on your illustrations. You've described your artwork as Mad Magazine meets R-Crumb on a head full of acid.
Yeah.
Who is Cletus Stinkfinger?
Oh, Cletus Stinkfinger was a character. I made a coloring book for my nephew for his birthday one year, and so I took a bunch of drawings that I'd done, but Angela helped me, and we went through and laid it out, made a whole coloring book, and I had to come up with names for all these characters. And there was this zombie with a really long finger, so I don't know. Cletus Stinkfinger sounded like a good name for him.
These are these are illustrations that from an art project you called the Other Sketchbook, where you completed a drawing every day for 365 days. How did this come about?
It was actually Angela's suggestion. She was doing something similar with her photography, where she'd try and take a picture every day. And so she was like, why don't you, do it with your drawings? And that was I think on Tumblr, which is still up. Obviously you found them, but I don't really post. I mostly post on Instagram now.
More recently, you launched an amazing series of political cartoons around the last election. The Incredible Sulk was also your very first tweet. What was it like to be retweeted by Bette Midler and William Gibson?
Kind of cool. The whole reason I joined Twitter was because William Gibson and people had sent me William Gibson's tweet and then Bette Midler's tweet. And I just thought I would join Twitter so nobody would take my name and then try and subvert the stuff I'm doing, And so then I don't use Twitter very much, but I keep it. So I have my name as the @RichRagsdale on Twitter. And recently I did actually do a political cartoon about Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson being sort of cheerleaders for Vladimir Putin, and it caught on pretty well on Twitter. It's kind of weird. Normally I get almost no traction. I don't really care. I don't use Twitter much, but for some reason that one everybody liked it. I mean, not everybody, everybody on my side of the political fence.
Let's talk about Thailand and Ghost House. Can you speak any Thai?
I could, you know, like my brother and Angela and I took Thai lessons before we went to go make the movie, of which I've forgotten almost everything at this point. I can say a few things that probably get me in trouble in Thailand. That's about it.
What's your favorite go-to Thai street food?
Well, you know, I don't know if I have a favorite, but I love street food in general in Thailand. I mean, the food is so good. I mean, once you come back to America, you know, if you go eat at a Thai restaurant, even if it's run by Thais, it's just, for some reason, it's just never that good. It's so good, the street food in Thailand. I can't really describe it.
What can you tell me about the feral cats and millions of bats?
The what? I'm sorry?
The feral cats and millions of bats.
Oh, in Thailand.
Yeah, in Thailand.
Well, you know, like there are a ton of feral cats in Thailand, and they are amazing cats. I mean, they're all street cats, but they're beautiful. I mean, they're just the best looking cats. I like cats a lot. And so we would wander around, and there's a lot of feral dogs too, but they always look kind of mangy and messed up and stuff. But these cats always look amazing. They're really awesome. And then there was a night where we went to there's a place you can go out and stand in this field, and there's a cave in the mountain, and you can stand at the base of the mountain and watch. And as the sun sets, millions of bats fly out of this cave at night, and it just goes on for hours because there's so many bats, and they just fly into the night to go off and feed on whatever, small children or something. I don't know. But it's amazing to sit there and watch this just cloud of bats that just never ends. It's really beautiful.
Who is Go-Go and Banana?
Well, Go-Go, when we first went to Thailand, everyone in Thailand, Thai like sort of traditional names are very, very long. And so everybody in Thailand, they give each other nicknames, you know, like short little names. And the first time that we went, our driver was this guy. He was really cool. His name was Go-Go. He had a girlfriend that they called Banana. And Go-Go was just the sweetest guy on the planet, and we really loved him. And so when we wrote Ghost House, we based a character on him, you know. So he's famous through our movie, I guess. I don't know.
Who suggested the Buddhist blessing and ritual before you began filming?
That came from the crew. You know, before we started shooting, they had a monk come down and bless the film, and it was very cool. And then anytime we shot in a place that seemed like it would be particularly haunted, they would bring another monk out, and or they would at least just do a little ceremony, you know, with you know, make an offering with incense and some food for the gods, or those ghosts rather. And so, you know, there's a lot of that kind of ritual stuff that happens in Thailand, and it definitely kind of made it into the film as well as being part of the production of the film.
How did you come up with the idea for Ghost House?
Okay, so like when we first went to Thailand, well, I'd been to Thailand once before with my brother, but his wife is Thai, and they just had a baby, and they decided to take the baby to Thailand to meet her extended family over there. And my brother invited my girlfriend and I to come along. So we flew out and met him there. And Angela had never left like sort of the continental US at that point. And the jet lag from flying all the way to the other side of the planet just was really hard on her. And so the first day or so, I just kept like, you got to get up, you got to get on schedule, you can't sleep all day kind of thing. I kept bugging her. So I took her for a walk. And we went for a walk out into the jungle. We were staying in this place called Ho Hen's little seaside village. And we walked out into the jungle, and we're going down this old dirt road, and we find this place where all the locals had thrown away their old ghost houses. So it was like a graveyard of ghost houses. Or ghost houses or spirit houses are these shrines they put up outside of their homes and businesses, and you leave offerings to the spirits, your ancestors, to some of them are to gods, but the basic idea is to, appease the spirits. And, there's also a superstition that if a bad ghost gets into a ghost house, it can be very, very bad. Anyway, so we're poking around these old discarded ghost houses, like taking things out of them, taking pictures, it just was very novel to us, being like stupid tourists, really, out in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, man, this is like something that like dumb white people do in horror movies. So it's like, it would make a great idea for a horror film. So that was the initial kernel. And then of course, like we based a lot of this stuff on, like Go-Go was a guy that we met there. And a number of the things that happen in the movie are sort of loosely based on things that we encountered or did in our travels through Thailand.
In the final scene, when Julie has her showdown with the WANNABE, how is it? Watabi. Were some of those sequences filmed in your garage with chicken hearts?
Yeah. So when we had edited it together, it was a very small movie as far as its budget, and so we shot as much as we could in Thailand, and we felt like the movie, it has a lot of production value and was building up to this big ending. And then when we sort of edited the ending together, it didn't feel big enough. And so I had this idea of like, why don't we extend this whole ritual, weird exorcism kind of thing by getting kind of surreal, kind of going back to this, like I said, I'm a big fan of these like David Lynch movies and stuff. And so we shot a bunch of like special effects stuff. And a lot of it I shot here at my house. I just go out my garage and set up a little studio. It's kind of inspired actually by the way that Stanley Kubrick did it for 2001. He did a lot of the weird viscous fluids in his apartment. So I was like, I'm going to shoot this stuff in my garage. And so I just wanted it to be this, like, we're going into her body in the middle of this exorcism. So you see sort of like in my mind, you'd never seen an exorcism from the inside of a person, if that makes any sense. The sort of spiritual struggle. So it was like this, and our ghost had been burned in a fire. So I just wanted to be this world of like fire and biology and ghosts. And so I went to the Japanese grocery store and bought these little like chicken hearts and cut them all up and put them in water with like red ink, and would shoot them with this macro lens so that they look like weird, you can't really tell what it is, biological stuff, so that was how that happened.
So who worked the leaf blower?
Well, if it depends on where we were, but if it was when we were shooting the special effects, it was definitely my brother. He was the leaf blower guy. He's a producer, an actor, and a leaf blower technician.
This show is a big fan of Scout Taylor-Compton. Will you take a minute to say how wonderful it was to collaborate with her on Ghost House and The Long Night?
Yes, I mean, well, Scout, not only is she a great actress, but she's also a very good friend. I love Scout, and between having done 2 movies with her at this point, we're very good friends, and I plan on making more movies with her in the future. She is a one of a kind. She's just super, super talented. And I mean, I feel like she deserves to be a huge star. Not that she's not, but I mean, why Angelina Jolie and not Scout? I don't know. She's that good to me.
The Long Night was filmed in Eugene, South Carolina, at a house older than the country. The cinematography and visuals you capture in both of these films are worth the price of admission. It is a culmination of all the experimentation that came before it. It's really wonderful. Members of cult wearing animal masks and robes trap a couple in a remote house is the basic premise of it. Where are those masks now?
They are in my basement. I got them.
And
here.
I have one.
Well, you know what? I'll see what I can do.
How did you get involved with The Long Night?
It was kind of a weird situation in that, like, Ghost House was a movie that we wanted to make, right? It was like this idea that my brother and I came up with together. We developed it, we worked with writers, and it became a film that we wanted to make, and it did quite well for us. Whereas The Long Night was, I got a text one day from a producer that I've worked with in the past, and he was like, "Hey, you want to make a movie?" I was like, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "Well, we're in South Carolina." And I was like, "Okay." And then I didn't hear from him from like a week. It was just kind of like, oh, I guess he was just goofing with me. And so then I texted him back, it was like 4, 5, 6 days later, and was like, "Are you serious about that movie thing?" And he's like, yes. Do you really want to do it?" I was like, "Well, I think so. Yeah, why not? I mean, So I flew to South Carolina, and it was, like I said, it was not, they had actually had a director, and he left the project. He had written the original draft, and he left the project. And then they brought in another director, and something happened. They fired him, or he quit or something. I'm not 100% sure what happened there. And there was just this crew like waiting around to work. They're paying all these people like half scale just to be there, or half rate. And so I show up, and they burned through all this money, and I mean, it's not really the fault. It's just kind of one of those things where it was a troubled production, and so I show up, and I'm like, everybody seemed kind of demoralized because they've been waiting for a long time to work, and the scripts, people have been messing with the scripts. They were all messy. It was like that. Some of them there were all these different drafts. They handed me like 3 different drafts, and some of them didn't make that much sense. And so they were like, "We have to start shooting in about," I think it was like 10 or 11 days. So I had to kind of work with my guys. I got them to hire a few of my people, and we just tried to redesign the movie as quickly as we could. And, we had to recast the whole thing. I mean, it was like a crazy, it's like getting in a car that's pointed downhill with no brakes. It's like, okay, here we go. It's like,
what's the secret to an effective jump scare?
There's a couple of different ways to do it, but like, if you want to do it and make it not cheap, what you do is you have to develop some atmosphere. You have to create a sense of fear, like, oh man, that's like, that's gonna, like something bad's gonna happen. And so you build up the tension. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted for a second there, but you build up this atmosphere, this tension, like, oh, something bad is gonna happen to your character that hopefully you care about, and you kind of lead up to something, and then you don't give it to people, and then you kind of like let that, you're like, oh, okay, that, I guess we're cool, and then bam, then you hit them. So it's like build up, and then there's no accent. There's like, you drop off, and then you wait until people kind of catch their breath, and then you scare them. So that for me, that's the most effective and the most well-earned way to do a scare like that.
Ghost House and The Long Night are both set up for sequels. Are there any plans for second installments? And do you have any news about a feature-length version of The Loop?
Okay, so Ghost House, there's a sequel written, and we've actually done some pre-sales, and it's actually a prequel. We wrote a prequel to Ghost House, so I won't give too much away, but Mark Boone Jr.'s character in that film is a character named Reno. He's like an expat, a guy that lives in Thailand, an American living in Thailand. And so we've actually written a film about how he got there and his first encounters with Watabi and some other Thai ghosts. So we sort of set up Ghost House with a prequel, and it's set up just post-Vietnam War, so it'd be in the 70s. And we're very excited about it. We think it's very cool. And yes, I mean, there's a feature-length script for The Loop that I wrote mostly through COVID, and we're very happy with it. And I would love to do it. It's a little more expensive, but I would say I would describe it as Nightmare on Elm Street meets The Goonies on the set of Groundhog's Day.
And so you mentioned earlier that you're a big Romero fan. I believe I heard that you've met him. How did you meet him?
Some friends of mine and my brothers, they had produced one of George's later zombie films. I believe it was Diary of the Dead. And so we got invited to the premiere, and we went and saw the premiere. And then afterwards they were like, come on, we're going to have a little party, little after party, and hung out with George Romero. And it was just like, you know, it was really, really great. I mean, he was such a sweet guy. He was also, I think, like 14 feet tall, but, you know, he was very, very tall, very sweet, and just a great guy.
So, all right. I heard you were a collector of vintage ventriloquist dolls.
I am.
Scale claimed one move during an interview. What's going on with that? Are any of them haunted?
We were doing a Zoom interview. I believe it was for the Boo Crew, and so the ventriloquist, I just kind of moved some stuff around before the interview, and I had set a dummy up. It's just off on a table or something in the background, just leaning against the wall. And I don't know what happened, but it just decided to move, and it really freaked Scout out.
So you collect strange and unique musical instruments. What is your most cherished instrument?
I have a lot of very weird musical instruments, a lot of really old ones, and then some just sort of unusual ones. But the one that I love the most is probably my Mellotron, which is a keyboard from the 1960s and 70s. That it's the kind of keyboard that like Pink Floyd or the Beatles would use. And,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like, so the kind of the keyboard you would hear on like Strawberry Fields Forever or something. And ironically, I bought it when I was doing a lot of TV music, and so if I bought it, I really wanted a Mellotron. I bought it, and I bought it from the actor Vincent Gallo. I don't know if you know who he is, but I didn't know if that's who I was buying it for. I got it on Craigslist. I showed up to his house, and it was like, oh, Vincent Gallo's house.
So what instrument do you want but don't have?
Well, there is this instrument that they used on the score for The Witch that was kind of it's a sort of a custom made instrument. I think it's called like the Nightmare Machine or something, and it's just a weird collection of like things that you can bow and scrape and do weird things to it. Like it's just an odd contraption, and it's just for making weird sounds. And I would love to have one, but they're very expensive. They're like I think the full version, because they make them custom. There's only a handful of them, and I think it costs probably, I think it's around 10 grand. So it's a lot of money.
It would be cool to have.
Oh, it would be so cool to have. You can look it up online. There are videos of people playing them, making weird sounds with them and stuff. So that would definitely be one of the ones I would love to have.
That would be so cool. This last question is a Sophie's choice. Two must die so that one may live. The works of David Lynch, Peter Greenaway, or John Carpenter. There we go.
Like, do I have to pick one? Is that
you have to pick one to survive?
Oh, well, Peter Greenaway was very important to me at a certain point in my life. At this point, I haven't watched any of his movies in a while, so he would easily probably be the first one to go, even though I feel terrible saying it because I love his movies desperately. And then I feel like John Carpenter and David Lynch are like the two halves of my brain, the like straight up genre, fun, cool, Escape from New York, They Live kind of thing. And then the Eraserhead, Lost Highway, Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive thing is the other side of my brain. Man, if I had to pick, I mean, I guess I would go with David Lynch movies because every time I watch a David Lynch movie, I see something new, regardless of how many times I've seen it.
Is there anything you want to ask me before we are done?
Well, I see you've got a They Live shirt on.
I do.
I mean, is that your favorite John Carpenter movie?
The Thing is technically, but They Live is really on the top spots.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
such
The
a
Thing
great-
is mine too, actually. That I agree with you, but I think They Live is a masterpiece. Well, let
They
me
Live
ask you.
is
I mean,
great.
did so you watched The Long Night, right?
I have watched The Long Night.
Did you
It's
enjoy the
really
film?
good.
What
It's
did you
really
think?
good.
Okay, cool.
I
Yeah.
want one of those masks.
Okay, cool. It's
I
definitely a
wasn't kidding.
weirdo movie, right? I mean, it's
It-
but I'm hoping that people like it. We
Both
took
of
some
them-
chances with it, so
Both of them, both Ghost House and The Long Night, were oddballs, but I really loved them. They were
Yeah.
great.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, well, I mean, I love Ghost House. I mean, it's very. It wasn't just a film that I liked making, but it was the whole. I mean, or that I'm proud of, but the making of Ghost House was a really special thing for us, so it was the biggest adventure I ever had. So it is, because like a lot of people, they're like, oh well, we don't have that much money, so let's make a scary movie, kind of like The Long Night, like in a house in the middle of nowhere where you don't have to go anywhere, and you kind of just set up camp and make a movie. And Ghost House was like, we don't have a lot of money, so let's fly halfway around the world and then make a movie where you change locations almost every day. It was like insane and stupid, and the best time I ever had in my life. Are you a Hitchcock fan too? I see a Hitchcock.
Hitchcock
I
is
see
great.
Psycho back there,
Yeah, Psycho. We also have The Birds over there. It's not in
nice.
screen, but The Birds is over there. I think that's actually signed too. And
Oh,
we
wow.
also have Vertigo right across from me. I stare at Vertigo.
Man, somebody raised you right, man. And I love that you got the creature too. That's probably,
Yeah.
I think, the best monster design of any of the Universal monsters. It's like,
It's the greatest. I also have a Skeksis,
oh man,
which Dark Crystal. Is
Dark
the
Crystal.
greatest.
I mean, I love puppets. That's like the ventriloquist dummy thing and all that. I also collect like old puppets and stuff. I love anything that's not real that we're willing to like invest like personality into, like that you can like look at a piece of fabric or a chunk of wood, and believe that it's real,
As well as the Skeksis. I also have a Fizzgig. So
Oh, nice. There you go.
I like Dark Crystal.
Dark Crystal is great. I love
It's
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's,
Did you like the series?
yes, it was great too. I love the series.
Yeah,
The
I
series
love the
was good,
series too. Really, really good. I was really disappointed when they decided not to make another one.
I didn't realize they decided not to.
Yeah,
I've
they
been
announced.
still
I think it was just too
waiting.
expensive.
That
The
makes
boy
sense.
was so good.
Yeah, it was great. I Jim Henson's great. But it's so sad that he passed. But where can people find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. But Instagram I post mostly drawings, and then Facebook, is where I kind of thump, my movies and stuff. So, and then Twitter is just where I, people yell at me. I don't.
It's Twitter.
It's Twitter. Yeah, it's a cesspool. It's a terrible place, man. But yeah, no, I would say at Rich Ragsdale on Instagram, or my name, Rich Ragsdale, on Facebook. So.
What's next for you?
Well, we have a number. I've written a number of different screenplays. My brother and I, like I said, we are sort of halfway there to getting Ghost House 2 made. We just, once we kind of if we can get a good domestic distributor to put up enough money for the domestic distribution, and we'll be ready to go. But I'm also, my brother and I are we're putting together a graphic novel that will probably come out in the fall. It's like a kind of a hush hush project right now. It's very cool. And I just submitted for a couple music videos. We'll see if I get those. And, so there'll be a number of music videos probably before the next film, and then hopefully we'll get you'll see either the Ghost House or the Loop or one of the other projects we have being produced.
Can't wait.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. I can't wait either.